Well, good morning, DamFam. Today, recording day is Thursday, July 16th, and today on the Daily Beaver Morning Show, we will be talking a little bit about some cautious optimism. We ended the show yesterday stating that the Bank of Canada had kept our rate at 2.25%, but there's been more economic news and commentary since and before then stating how our economy is doing better. So we will bring you a little bit of that. And then in the second half of our show, um, uh, people are just behaving really weird. There's just been a whole bunch of weird news stories from the leader of the separatists who had his assets frozen to a former member of the Conservative Party of Canada, or maybe current member, former MP anyway, under Stephen Harper, who I believe has been found to be armed to the teeth to some very reckless protesting happening in Nova Scotia that put the premier in potential danger. So I think we need to calm down a little bit. So we'll be looking at some weirdness. So some cautious optimism, kits and cubs, coupled with a little bit of recklessness here uh, today on the Daily Beaver Morning Show. So grab your favorite bevy because here we go.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 6 and episode number 947 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian, and of course, always beaverific. Today, recording day, is Thursday, July 16th, 2026, and it looks like it's a beautiful day here at the Beaver Lodge, much less smoky than it was yesterday. I did opt to, my beaver sweetie forced me to stay home and said I couldn't go out and play tennis yesterday. Poop. So, because of the smoke, and because the last time I went to play in heavy smoke, I got a little sick. So, we stayed home and we watched the World Cup match instead yesterday. And gee, that Argentinian team, man, I don't know what it is, but they sure know how to come from behind. I will let you do with that turn of phrase what you will. Anyway, that would have been funnier last month. Yeah. um, so yeah, the beautiful day here. Big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Mood Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Damn fam, how is your mental health today? I am doing well, considering that I got very little sleep the last 2 nights. Not because of the usual things, unfortunately or fortunately, depending. But yeah, I have just been waking up very, very early on my own. Well, actually, not on my own. I've had a little help from the Beaver sweetie. There's actually a podcast that came into my feed yesterday saying talking about the concept of bed divorce, and it's like I don't want bed divorce. I like snuggles, but I also really like sleep, and I would prefer not to have to sleep in shifts. So yeah, um, but yeah, my energy is great. No huge bags under my eyes, and I'm feeling good. I'll probably need a nap around noon or something because I've been up since 3 a.m. Yeah, but hey, I had a very productive morning. Let's just put it that way. I'm feeling very well. I'm feeling positive. I'm feeling happy. It's a good day here in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful day at the Beaver Lodge. A beautiful day to be a beaver. So yeah, I actually couldn't ask for better at the moment. So I hope you are having a fantastic day too. Saw in the chat as the credits were rolling something about Pete Hegseth wanting to administer, I think it is testosterone tests or something of the like. Let's see here. I'll uncover the news. Pete Hegseth wants men in the military to get hormone replacement therapy if their testosterone levels are too low. Have fun with that one, Mr. Beaver. Well, my first instinct is, mm, Mr. Hegseth seems like he's just a little bit, oh, what's the word? Testy? It's like being at a twisted amusement park. You must have this much testosterone to ride. Oh, my word. Oh, well, yeah, at least there are some conservatives that do believe in gender affirming care. Because the trans men in the military go, wait a minute, wait, we're getting free testosterone now? Damn, I'm going to be able to go out and buy myself a steak dinner now that I don't have to pay my HMO anymore. Oh, my word. You know, if you guys remember the day back of Stephen Colbert back in the day when he had the Colbert Report, where he's playing the character like he was right wing, uh, every now and then he would go so far right, he'd come back to left, right? And those moments I always found particularly hilarious. And that's sort of that. It's like we can't be promoting any women. I think there was something I saw yesterday that I think it's been a whole year since women in the military in the United States got some type of promotion. It's just It says here, according to the New York Times, for the first time in more than a decade, no active duty female, hold on, Navy officers are likely to be promoted to admiral this year. There you go. And then wants to, of course, have all the trans people out of the military because, warrior culture. Because Pierre Polyev at the Stampede decided to copy off the test of the dumbest kid in the class. But yes, we must have a warrior culture. So, uh, if the men in the military are not masculine enough because they don't have enough testosterone, let's give them some testosterone supplements. But we don't want no trans men, though. Even if they're already getting the testosterone supplements, because they're not mentally. I cannot. I cannot. They don't want to give medical care to trans men, but they're willing to give gender affirming care to to cisgender men if their testosterone levels have been tested, if the testosterone in their testes have been tested, and they can attest that the level is not detestable because they need the gray test. Ah, oh my god. I'm just oh my god, these people. Oh my god. Do do the trans men who already get their testosterone basically get, like, a double dose now? 'Cause, man, there's gonna be hair coming all out of those chests now. How do you know you got the best military in the world? It's the chest on our hair. Oh my god. Oh, sheesh. That's already that they're giving the president makeup. Commander in chief. Oh my god. Okay. Oh, man, that was funny. Thank you, Kid Uncover. Yeah, you can't put that bait out in front of me and expect me not to take a bite at it. Couple of other quick news bits here. Ontario bars students at 5 career colleges from receiving OSAP loans. Hopefully, those are from career colleges that probably never should have received them in the first place. Maybe if Doug Ford could take care of that side of the problem, more students could actually get their grants back. Just saying. Right. What else do we have here in terms of some news items? President Trump appears to have assigned FBI officers to investigate the rampant vandalism he claimed has sabotaged his slimy reflecting pool. Yes, because it had nothing to do with painting the bottom of the pool a dark color, which would make the water warmer and create conditions that are perfect for algae to grow. Oh my god. Gee. Let's see, what else do we have here? Yeah, more stuff like that. Washington has put in place tariffs on certain imports from Brazil. The 25% tariffs are set to take effect on July 22nd, with exemptions for key products including beef and coffee. All right. What else do we have here? From Kid Uncover, that was the hormone stuff. Canada is not banning produce imports amid U.S. cyclosporiasis outbreak. Canadian Food Inspection Agency says a man was arrested in London over the threat to shoot and kill Nigel Farage. That is not okay. We do not do that. Oh boy. Thunder Bay Superior North MP Patty Haidu says Ontario has not made a request for federal assistance regarding Northern Ontario forest fires. I've been hearing on the news that there actually is no more room in Thunder Bay for people to be evacuated to, so they're flying them down to Toronto. NDP, provincial NDP, Saul Mamakwa was stating something like, we probably need to be working on that in the future to have the capacity to house 6,000, maybe up to 10,000 people in the north in case of evacuations. So things are getting pretty serious out there. I think I was seeing as well from CBC, I think I picked up that said that after a slow start, the wildfire season in Canada is picking up. The Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center says that there are currently 838 active wildfires in Canada with nearly 2 million hectares or 10,000 square hectares, 10,000 square meters. So 2 million areas of 10,000 square meters having already been burned. Hundreds are current burning across the country, is what I mentioned here, including 130 in northwestern Ontario. Dave Sawyer, principal economist at the Canadian Climate Institute, says that wildfire smoke cost Canada $231 billion between 2014 and 2025, or about $19 billion annually in health impacts. Quote, so the chronic impacts include things like asthma and bronchitis attacks. We have avoided activity days, so we can't go outside and enjoy the day, or we can't work. So there's productivity and income hits there, and it all adds up to an economic number ultimately. You may have seen yesterday online or on TV images of the CN crew. If you don't have that, I can bring that to you here, that were caught on the train, operating it, working at it, while things were rather intense.
This could potentially overtake us here. This is getting a little scary.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Okay. Yeah, this is...
Okay, y'all need to hurry up here. Like, seriously, we're encased in flames now.
You guys gotta go backwards. No.
Hello, Jody, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you there. I'm telling them you were notching up.
Yeah, this has got to move fucking quick here. Holy crap. Oh, that's alright. This kind of burnt off, so we'll be okay now.
Yeah, it went across. Holy shit.
Oh yeah, look over there.
We are
You guys got a light now or what? Did you guys get that light? Oh yeah, they're clipping. Whew! That's a meat and a half, eh?
So there you go, kids and cubs. I have no idea how they kept calm. I'm going to have no problem with a couple of swear words in that. That was, I'm surprised that there wasn't more. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, can you imagine the temperature in there? It says Kit Tabby G. At what temperature do train rails melt? Ask Kit Linda. I have no idea. But let's look. At what temperature do train tracks melt? Train tracks do not melt in normal weather, but they can physically warp at around 50 degrees to 60 degrees Celsius. Because steel absorbs heat, direct sunlight can make tracks up to 20 degrees Celsius hotter than the surrounding air. To actually melt steel rails, temperatures must reach approximately 1,500 degrees Celsius. So, that's definitely enough temperature to make it warp, at least. So, yeah, there you go. Kitsasi going train operators are a pretty tough bunch. Yeah, they must see quite a lot of things there. So yeah, and Kitlinda says a reminder that in a breathtaking planning move, Ford cut firefighting funds last year and this year. Yeah, indeed. So some very scary things happening there. It has been reported that that train was near Armstrong, Ontario, about 1,000 kilometers northwest of Toronto. CN says the crew was safely evacuated. Everyone from the Collins First Nation pretty much had to evacuate. The chief there worries that there will be nothing left once all this is over. Residents of 6 other communities in Northern Ontario have been forced to evacuate. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much what I had from that situation there. But yeah, that's a pretty scary situation indeed. Let's see, who else do we have here? All right, I think that's everything we've got. Oh, yes, and Kit Uncover reminds us that Donald Trump has a speech tonight. Um, I'm not sure if I'm going to do a watch party of that because I try to stay as much to Canadian stuff as possible, but given that I don't know, and he gets a lot of attention anyway. But I'll think about that because it could be a good idea. Considering all that's going on in this particular time with the trade negotiations and everything, to tune in. So I may do that. I may do that. Okay. Um, so let's see what else we have here. So let's start with the economic stuff, the stuff that says that we should have a little bit of cautious optimism here. Um, as you know, the Bank of Canada kept its rate steady, as a lot of people had expected it would. I'm just going to make sure that I have my video prepped here. Let's see, is that working here? Okay, yeah, let's do this. I did not have my video prepped. Well, you can't win them all. So the Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem opened up and said that he had 3 key messages that he wanted people to retain from what it is that he was going to say today, or if you were only tuning in to listen to the first few minutes. So let's put those up for you so that you can hear them for yourself.
Decision. The Governing Council has maintained the policy interest rate at 2.25%. We have 3 key messages. First, after stalling over the past year, economic growth looks to have resumed in Canada. While U.S. trade policy continues to be a headwind, consumers have been resilient and businesses are adapting. Second, inflation in Canada is poised to ease, provided global oil prices decline from elevated levels. And third, uncertainty remains high. The conflict in the Middle East has re-escalated in recent days, and trade discussions with the United States remain ongoing.
So those were the key messages that the governor wanted us to be aware of. And a lot of the things that I brought yesterday with regard to that sort of were in line with everything that he was saying here. There wasn't much more to add in terms of what those three messages and what I read into the record yesterday, because I read it directly from the Bank of Canada statement, and some of the things that were in there were repeated in this press conference. But he mentioned some things. If we have some broad outlines, that CPI inflation rose to 3.2% in May, mainly because of higher gasoline prices linked to the conflict in the Middle East. But that excluding gasoline, inflation was 2.2%, and measures of core inflation have remained close to 2%. So far, we're not seeing broad spillovers of energy prices to other goods and services. Near-term inflation expectations are sensitive to changes in gasoline prices, but longer-term inflation expectations remain well anchored. War-related cost pressures are still working their way through some consumer prices, but they're being offset by downward pressure from other prices from continued economic slack. He also says, in addition, the recent depreciation of the Canadian dollar will make our exports more competitive, but it also increases the costs of our imports. Inflation is expected to stay elevated in June and then gradually ease in the coming months, returning to the 2% target early in 2027. He does say that the forecast is highly dependent on the path for global oil prices and gasoline. It assumes that oil prices come down and stabilize between $70 to $75 US per barrel. And if we look at the price of oil, so I'm going to go to our trading economics thing and look at the commodities. Uh, it's done a very interesting thing over the past few weeks. It's done interesting things over the past few months as well. But over the past few weeks, specifically. So let's put this up here for you. And first of all, we'll look at the past few months. So this graph goes from August of basically July 18th or so 17th of 2025, so a year ago today, to where it is today. And you can see that up until let's go here until March 2nd, 2026. The highest the price a barrel of oil was about $69.82, and that was on July 30th, 2025. And from that point on, so basically from this point last year till March 2nd or so, let's put it this way, no, so about February 27th or so of this year, right? The price of gas had been under $70 per barrel. Then, February 27th, it hits $70 per barrel and keeps going upwards and upwards and upwards until it hits a peak of about $111.62 a barrel on April 8th. Then it comes down very quickly to $81.53 on April 17th, shoots back up to $109 on April 29th. And then slowly it's been going down and hitting peaks. So it's been coming back down in sort of like in a saw fashion, right? So we went from about 109 down to 99, back to 107, down to 80, about 85, back up to 93 on June 3rd, and then it came down very sharply to about $67 a barrel, which was below the Bank of Canada forecast at that point. But since the ceasefire doesn't look like it is holding between July 2nd and July 16th, so this is just 14 days, it has gone from $67.65 back to $80.31, which is above the level that the Bank of Canada here is using in its assumptions, right? They're doing $70 to $75 per US per barrel. So right now, the price is making it look like we might have a little dip in inflation numbers for gas in June, maybe in July, and then they're going to start going back up again. Bank of Canada recognized that, said since finalizing our forecast on Friday, the futures curve for oil prices has already moved higher. We've been looking through the direct effects of higher oil prices on inflation, but the longer they remain elevated, the bigger the risk they spill over to other goods and services. As we said before, we will not let higher oil prices become persistent inflation. To that end, let's see here. There are three areas where he speaks about oil. One in the original statement that he is making, and two following questions he has been asked by journalists in the Q&A section that follows. So first, let's go to what it is that he mentioned in his prepared notes already. It's just under 2 minutes, I believe. Oops. Okay. I see that it did not take off. So let's try that one more time for you, kits and cubs. Ah, having trouble with Restream the past few days there. There we go. Okay, let's try one more time. There he is.
So let me now expand on the outlook, the risks, and the implications for monetary policy. Growth has been dented by the conflict, and global growth has been dented by the conflict in the Middle East. But with oil prices coming partway back down, growth is expected to recover. Equity markets have been buoyant, and credit spreads remain compressed. Canada's GDP growth was flat over the past year as the economy adjusted to new tariffs, elevated uncertainty, and slower population growth. The economy remains in excess supply. The labor market has been soft, with the unemployment rate hovering in a range of 6.5% to 7%. GDP growth in the second quarter is estimated to have picked up to 2.5%. While this rebound from the first quarter largely reflects the unwinding of temporary factors, sources of economic growth appear to be broadening. Recent indicators point to continued solid consumer spending. Housing activity, which has been weak, looks to be stabilizing. Export growth has resumed and is expected to continue to strengthen, albeit along a lower path. Business investment is picking up, boosted in the near term by the oil and gas sector. And although the Canada-US-Mexico agreement is now subject to annual reviews, more businesses report they are finding ways to navigate through this uncertainty. Government spending also contributes to higher economic activity over the projection. Overall, our growth outlook is similar to our April forecast, but the data we've received since April have increased our confidence that the economy is indeed working through this period of global upheaval.
So, with all of those factors, again, the confidence that the economy is working through this period of global upheaval. So, there is a sense of cautious optimism here when you're looking at all the things together. One of the reasons I bring that to your attention is because Pierre Poilievre was talking a lot about the whole part about a technical recession thing, right? And I was listening to an interview with Francis McDonald, who's the chief economist at the um, Royal Bank of Canada, at RBC. Yes. And she was talking about this specifically with regard to a recession. I believe it was her, if I'm not mistaken. Um, But there is the 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. That's the shortcut that we use, and we have had that. Um, the It hasn't been so determinative on either side of the ledger, right? But we have had that, and over the last 4 quarters, 3 of the 4 have been negative growth. There's been one that was negative, one that was fairly positive that followed after that, and 2 others that were slightly negative, but essentially gives the impression of pretty much negative growth for the last year. Um, but a recession, in addition to 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decline, that's the shortcut, also requires pronounced, pervasive, and persistent declines in economic activity. And we don't have that at the moment. Consumer spending is okay. In fact, the governor of the Bank of Canada states specifically how consumer spending has been doing a lot of heavy lifting for us in this economy. Business investment did increase, not by tons, clearly, but did increase. Um, right? We have um, the level of GDP decline at minus 0.35%, which, if you annualize that, comes to minus 0.1. But in the last quarter or the last month alone, I think, or the first month of the third quarter, I think it was, the numbers are showing 0.5% GDP growth. So if we annualized that one, right, it would be pretty impressive growth. So, um, yeah, the numbers, in addition, because whenever a curveball hits from the south and one actually lands and affects something, it throws numbers into turmoil. So it's hard to get an uninterrupted, what I would call longitudinal, right, over a period of time, sense of what numbers are in a consistent environment. Because every time you're looking at statistics and you have to see something, you have to go back and you see a big shift. You have to look to see if something happened to create that shift, which can explain it, whether it's an anomaly or, or whether or not it was literally something, you know, if you want to say mismanagement, like, at this point, the country fell under other management and then just went under, and it didn't have anything to do with a recession or a crash or a pandemic. Like this particular government drove the economy into the ground. You have to go back and look at, what happened, if there's anything that explains those shocks, right? And there shouldn't be that many, right? We had a crash in 2008, and then we had a pandemic in, you know, 2019 that started at the end of 2019. So let's say 2020. Between there was, there was the shock of the war in Ukraine when supply things, got changed. So you can look at big things like that and then place them on the chart. But usually, often, you get certain numbers of periods of time, sometimes years, without major shocks like that. And then you can kind of get a sense of how things behave, right? To pick out what's anomalous. Um, so, yes, 2 quarters of GDP decline. That's one thing, but that's not all there is. There has to be other things in there. Like I said, pronounced, pervasive, persistent declines in economic activity. And that has not been happening. So, according to Frances McDonald, she would say that the economy isn't as bad as it looks, right? Even though the past several years, about 2/3 of Canadians, so even before Trump returning, have been saying that in polls that they believe that we are near a recession. And she claims that this type of news kind of validates the fact that, we had 2 negative quarters, and says maybe it's a technical recession, would actually validate what Canadians are feeling, right? So, very important stuff to know and to be aware of. But right, the 2 consecutive quarters is uh, a rule of thumb that indicates when you need to start looking, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily it. You will, in that answer that the governor of the Bank of Canada offered, there was a little bit of a statement about oil, but in this one, it was just sort of uh, general overall looking at all the metrics, but is mentioned that business investment has picked up due to activity or increased activity in the oil and gas sector. So that is helping us. Um, let's see, what else do we have here? So we get to a journalist's question here, and this is Judy Trin from CTV, uh, who I have not as much appreciation for as I do certain other journalists, and the only reason is that I find that her framing is often extremely negative, and it's almost like she's gleefully looking for the negative news angle. So in this one, right, the Governor of Bank of Canada is essentially expressing that in rather turbulent times, to say the least. You know, with all the shocks and all the rules of the game being changed on a whim over and over again, um, we're handling this pretty well. It would be better if none of this was going on. Our numbers would probably be much better, but we are overall handling it pretty well, and we're looking at some potential economic growth for this year. And again, in the next few years, according to what's coming from the World Bank and their statements. So, you know, barring any major new changes, like some major Kuzma disruption or another respike in the price of oil because Donald Trump's needs to declare victory a 47th or 53rd time before the war in Iran is actually over. Yeah, I said it. Right? We're adapting. We're adapting. It's not easy, but we're adapting. So we have Judy Trin here, looking actively, very actively, for the negative angle. And you tell me if you think it might be even a little disrespectfully.
Hello. Is it possible that you are being overly optimistic? I'm hearing so many caveats in your comments as to the state of the economy. At the same time, your business survey that you put out just a few days ago indicated that business sentiment has deteriorated over the past 3 quarters, or has deteriorated after improving over the past 3 quarters. So I'd like to get a better sense of the reality. You show. I'm sorry, I'm having problems expressing myself because the data seems conflicting at many points. So what I'm trying to get at is, do you really think that the economy is going to improve this year and over the next few years, given the constraints that we are feeling and facing right now?
Well, we're calling it as we see it. So yes, our baseline forecast is that the economy is going to improve. There are risks around that, as I've talked about. But to come back to why are we feeling more confident that the economy is expanding once again? Going back to some of the data I outlined at the outset, consumers, you got to give some credit to Canadian consumers. They've been resilient. They are consumer spending is still expanding. It's not a big number. There's very little population growth in the Canadian economy at the moment, so there's not new consumers entering the economy. But Canadian households are still spending. That is supporting growth. Where we've seen weakness, we've seen weakness in the housing market. As I said, we don't expect the housing market to be a big boost to growth going forward, but what we are seeing in the housing market is, after a period of decline, it is stabilizing, so it's not going to be subtracting from growth if that holds. Where we see a little more momentum than we have seen is in exports. Canadian businesses have been adapting to a more difficult trade relationship with the United States. That includes severe tariffs on a number of key sectors in the Canadian economy. It's also created an environment where there's more trade uncertainty. We're a good year into that now. What we're hearing from companies is they are adapting. They're finding ways to they're finding ways to work with their clients. They're reconfiguring their supply chains. They're getting on with business. And the other factor is the U.S. economy is strong. I mean, the reality is they need our exports. And you're seeing U.S. businesses increasingly, increase their orders for our Canadian exports. And if you get more exports, with that, you'll probably get more business investment. We're already seeing plans in the oil and gas sector for more investment. Obviously, when oil prices are high, the value of our oil exports is higher. Companies are incentive to increase output, and so they're investing. So, when you look at the data we have, when you look at our business surveys, you're right that the overall index isn't very optimistic. But if you look at the subcomponents, you look at what companies are telling you about their plans, you can see more optimism going forward. So that is built into our baseline. And that is our best assessment of the growth path for the Canadian economy. Absolutely, there are risks around that. There could be new developments, that momentum we see could stall. That is something we're watching very closely. We want to see this pick up and growth sustained. The economy's in excess supply. It's got room to grow without causing inflation. We want to see that excess supply absorbed. That's going to be important to getting inflation back to target and keeping it there. So that's something we're going to be watching closely.
So there you have it, kits and cubs. And I'm seeing in the comments that you did indeed notice some of the things. I did as well. Kid Grace, the look on the woman's face says it all. The woman is the senior deputy governor, Carolyn Rogers. And yes, right? She's looking, really? Kit Linda goes, she's got attitude in that question. Mm-hmm. Kit Sassy, slightly emotional, and saying the woman's face was indeed amusing. Kit Bucky, who's asking the question, which is basically, aren't you wrong? Right? Go to Kit Tabby G. Are you bullshitting us? Just state it. So yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I tell you, that was weird. That was weird. So yeah, interesting question there from Judy Trin, but again, you got an answer here. You heard what the Governor Bank of Canada said, praising the consumer here, and basically stating it's like, listen, we call it as we see it. There's no even any reason for this question. We're the Bank of Canada. We look at the data and we tell you what we see. It's I'm not sure. The other question about oil was it actually a rather interesting one, but one that's obviously hard to answer. Um, uh, um, because it's an inflation question, but it depends on whether or not the price of oil, the inflation remains uh, due to the price of oil, whether the price of oil starts permeating into the overall costs of everything else. But a very interesting question, and one I am actually glad was asked, because it's probably on a lot of our minds, and maybe we don't have the vocabulary to ask it.
Hey, good morning. So I know that this is not your base case, but I'm hoping you can give an estimate of how high oil prices need to get and for how long until they need to stay there until the impact on inflation does become broad-based.
Well, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed because I'm not going to put a number on those things. The value of publishing scenarios like we did in the April Monetary Policy Report is they give you a sense of without putting a precise number on it. They give you a sense of when it really becomes material. So if you go back and you look at that scenario, I can tell you that what's really key is it's not only how high it goes. The key thing is how long it remains high. If it goes up and comes down, inflation's going to go up and come down, and so that's probably not something we'd want to respond to, because if we raise rates, by the time rates feed through to the economy, inflation's already going to be down, and we're going to regret that we raised them. We didn't need to. What's really key is the persistence. If oil prices are higher and they remain high, then that really increases the persistence of inflation. It increases the spreading of higher oil prices to the prices of other goods and services, we've been very clear that we're not going to let higher oil prices become generalized, persistent inflation. So that is something we need to react to. What I can also tell you is we will be watching closely. We're going to be watching oil developments in oil markets very closely. We're also going to be watching very closely how much those spill over to other goods and services, because how much it spills over also depends on the state of the economy. If the economy is weak, if it's got excess supply, companies they're more reluctant to raise prices. They find it very difficult to raise prices. They don't have enough customers already. If they raise prices, they're going to lose more customers. They may decide to absorb more of that. So that's why I can't give you a simple answer with a simple number. It's going to depend on the state of the economy. It's going to depend as much of the persistence is on how high. But that scenario we published in the April Monetary Policy Report does give you a clear indication.
All right. And I will go to one last one that does not have anything to do with oil, but has to do with housing, where it will be the Senior Deputy Governor, Carolyn Rogers, who will be answering this one. And it is a pretty straightforward question about the housing market specifically.
Okay, next, Rob McClister, please go ahead.
Good morning. Housing has barely responded to a 275 basis point cut in the policy rate, and that's despite a purported housing supply shortage. Do you sense that monetary policy might have lost some traction on housing, and how much could that potentially hold you back from tightening rates in the future, other things equal?
Well, I think there's a number of things affecting housing right now, Rob, as you would know. Monetary policy is one of them, but we have an affordability problem with housing in the country. So I think that's affecting, dampening the effects that a rate decrease might otherwise have. We also have this overhang of uncertainty. Housing is probably the biggest purchase most people will make. And if you're in a period of uncertainty, your inclination to make that purchase is less. So I think those are things in the mix that are probably holding the housing market back from what would otherwise be a response to monetary policy.
And there you have it, kids and cubs. So probably factors such as the price of housing, just in general, at the moment, might be having more impact on whether or not the housing markets are responding to the interest rates cuts with additional activity. And of course, period of uncertainty, because if people are not sure how long they're going to be able to keep their jobs, they're probably not going to make the biggest purchase of their lives at this moment. Also, in the previous answer, we mentioned here when the governor of the bank was talking about the question here, at what price does oil need to be at before, we need to panic? It's right. It's not just the price, but how long it's at the price. And you have other factors going on, like, for example, the United States having depleted its reserves. The United States is going to become a client, buying, right, some finished product to restore its reserves. The producing nations know that that's the case. So, given that they have a captive client that is actively looking to be buying some, that is going to keep some prices artificially high. And it may take till the end of 2028 for the United States to top up the reserves that they've used up this time around. So, there are many things that factor into this thing here. So yes, that's why he's saying, like, I can't give you a specific number. It's not that easy. But we did see, right, what the price of oil rising to about $113 a barrel did, and did rather quickly to the price of gas, at least at the pumps, right? So, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't look like the situation there is actually being resolved based on what we've seen. I think we're on the sixth consecutive day of fighting, and apparently a ceasefire that Donald Trump says is over, and then invites Iran to the table to negotiate a ceasefire. I just. Anyway, if your head hurts, that's normal. Just want you to know that. Okay, other things in this sort of field when we're talking about the economy. If I'm talking about the interview with Francis McDonald here. I have to see here. What is it that I want to get at? Yeah. So basically saying that the cost of living crisis is not uniquely Canadian, as much as Pierre Poilievre wants you to believe that the consumer price index basket in Canada is up 24% over the past 5 years, but food prices are up 34% over that same time span, and we've seen 16 consecutive months of food inflation rising faster than headline CPI, which also is not a uniquely Canadian story. We're actually in the middle of the pack when it comes to G7 countries on that front, regardless of what Pierre Poilievre tells you. The lowest quintile of households, so the lowest 20% of households, spend about 25% of their income on food, whereas the highest quintile spends about 5%. So again, when I keep on mentioning to you that different strata of the economy, different strata of the Canadian population are experiencing this very differently. Like, for example, if you lived in Windsor, unemployment did hit over 10% there at one point, which was one of the worst case scenarios when all of this started, right? But in other places, it didn't. So, right, if you're younger, the unemployment rate for you has been much higher. With the recent employment data, we saw that there was a relatively big boost to youth unemployment this time around. But youth unemployment is still over 12%, right? And with the affordability of housing is getting better, but there was a while now, that was if you were young, That was harder. If you were a person living alone, single, that was way harder than if you were living with somebody else. Because, for example, food, when you buy stuff like oil and you have to go buy the whole big bottle, you're not sharing that with 2 or 3 people or dividing that over 4 or 5 people. That's just for you. Now, of course, you don't have to go and buy it as often because you're the only one using it. But when you do, right, it's a big expense. A bottle of olive oil, it doesn't come cheap, right? So with that, we have the wage increases that have happened, and they have been higher than inflation for a while. However, those also haven't been distributed equally across the quintiles. If you are in the lower quintile over the last 5 years, your wage increases have been 28%. So consumer price index up 24, wage increase up 28, food prices up 34. And you spend 25% of your income on food if you're in the lowest quintile. So you feel that when food, even though your wages have increased 4% 4% more than the average consumer price index, because you're lower income, you spend a greater share of your income on food, and the price of food has gone up 6% more than your wage increases over the last 5 years. That's the situation for the lower quintile. If you are in the highest quintile, right, you spend about 5% of your income on food, so you're not feeling it as much. And your wage increases over the past 5 years have been 33% when food prices went up 34. So your wages have increased 9% more than the average consumer price index, and food only 1% more than your wage increases. So you're not particularly feeling that. And if you're in the higher quintile or the top quintile, you probably have house, right? If you probably own a house. People who own a house versus people who rent, their lives are very different right now. You probably had investments that have been doing really well, given what the stock market has been doing over the past little while, even though the American stock market at the moment is 3 AI companies in a trench coat. So when that corrects, that's going to correct hard. But these are other realities on how other people are feeling this economy different than everybody else. The other point that she makes is only the top 40%, so the first 2 quintiles, have a savings buffer at the moment. Everybody is spending a little less, but the top 20% are paying down mortgage liabilities faster, whereas the bottom 20% have pulled back on discretionary spending and transport. Again, people people are experiencing this very differently. And Frances McDonald states here that have I got the name right? Yeah, Frances McDonald. Okay, yes, I thought I had called her Frances McDormand, the actress. Frances McDonald states that there is among the people in the lowest quintile, despite all of that, the data is showing is that the amount of money they are spending on food is not increasing. So that, with them, explains why there is such a higher use or recourse to food banks at the moment. They're cutting down on discretionary spending and transport. They are still spending the same amount of money on food. They're not spending more on food, but they still need more food, so they're getting it from the food banks. The bottom 20%, their income has only changed because government transfers have increased, whereas the upper 20% have been doing well with their investments. For the bottom 20%, the increase in income is also explained by the fact that many of them are retirees. Right? That data skews the numbers, where you have people that are lower income, but they have high wealth. So that comes and skews the data. And we have a situation, of course, in Canada where we have about 25,000 people retiring every month. So programs for seniors and that type of stuff are some of the bigger expenses on the public accounts. So those are some economic realities that are facing us here. According to Jordan Daniel, as published in BNN Bloomberg, it states here with regard to oil and gas specifically, and one of the reasons that the Bank of Canada may have decided to keep rates steady is because higher gas prices, at least according to Jordan Daniel, are already acting like a rate hike ahead of the Bank of Canada decision. Well, not according to, Jordan Daniel, according to Jennifer Tauser, Senior Wealth Advisor and Portfolio Manager at National Bank Financial Wealth Management, as reported by Jordan Daniel of BNN Bloomberg. The Bank of Canada is unlikely to raise interest rates this week, and they didn't, even as the war in Iran continues to put pressure on energy prices and inflation, explains a financial analyst. Jennifer Tozer, Senior Wealth Advisor and Portfolio Manager at National Bank Financial Wealth Management, said to BNN Bloomberg, weaker than expected job growth and uncertainty surrounding CUSMA and the housing market are key factors affecting Canada's economic health, which Tozer points out will ultimately drive the Bank of Canada's decisions. Quote, it's a pretty fragile balance right now, and raising rates is not necessarily going to be good for the entire economy, she says. While the latest employment report exceeded expectations, Tozer says the headline figure masked weakness beneath the surface. Quote, we had an expectation that the new jobs created would come in at about 10,000, but they actually came in quite a big, larger number. They actually came in at quite a large. Let's try that again. We had an expectation that the new jobs created would come in at about 10,000, but they actually came in at quite a big, larger number of 18,000, says Tozer. However, Tozer says much of the employment growth came from part-time work, while Canada lost higher-paying government and manufacturing positions. Quote, we've actually replaced higher-paying jobs with lower-paying jobs, she says. The continued rise in the cost of gas and energy continues to put financial pressure on many Canadians, highlights Tozer. A typical Canadian feels that pinch on their day-to-day spending, so that itself acts a bit like an interest rate hike because it gives us less disposable money to spend, says Tozer. And it took a bit of pressure off us when the United States. However, she argues this predicament is structurally unlikely as energy prices differ significantly across spot prices and short and long-term contracts. Quote, I don't see energy prices remaining structurally longer for a long period of time. I'm going to say here that was supposed to read structurally higher for a long period of time. I don't see energy prices remaining structurally higher for a long period of time, but we would be listening to see if he has a different opinion, she says. The condition of Canada's housing market will also be central to the Bank of Canada's decision, says Tozer. Many homeowners have recently renewed mortgages at significantly higher rates, while Canadian banks have reported increases in loans that are at least 90 days delinquent, she says. Home sales have also weakened. Quote, our housing market is so important to an average Canadian. An average Canadian has a mortgage, Tozer says. Trade uncertainty is also complicating the outlook for Canada, she says, particularly as businesses await greater clarity over the future of CUSMA. The auto sector has been among the industries most exposed to tariffs and uncertainty over the North American trading relationship. Tozer says the tentative 3-year agreement reached between Ford Motor Company and Unifor, covering approximately 5,000 workers, is therefore an important signal for Canada's manufacturing sector. On that front, kits and cubs, according to the Canadian Press, as reported by CTV News. A new deal has been struck for a 3-year labor contract between a union representing Canadian auto workers and Ford Motor Company. The tentative agreement covers roughly 5,000 workers at 5 plants in southern Ontario, including Windsor, Annex, and Essex engine plants, and one in Alberta. Details are being kept under wraps until they can be presented to union members for ratification. Negotiations began on June 22, 2026, coming at a time when deals at all 3 of the big American auto workers were set to expire. The union opted to negotiate with Ford first, a move similar to the one it took during the last round of talks in 2023. Negotiations with Stellantis and General Motors are expected to begin after the Ford agreement is ratified. Often what happens is that the union will pick one auto company to go after first, get a deal, and then that one acts sort of as a template for the ones to be negotiated with the others. So that happened here. Quote, it shows a willingness to negotiate that this deal has been signed. It shows a willingness for Canada to continue to be an important manufacturer for the auto industry, she says. Tauser says manufacturing accounts for approximately 10% of Canada's gross domestic product, making it critical for the country to maintain its presence in the sector. Quote, to maintain all those workers for 3 years is significant, she says. Despite the Canadian dollar's weakness, which normally would make domestic manufacturing more cost competitive, Tauser says Canada is struggling to attract and retain investment. Quote, we are actually at a pretty strategic disadvantage right now when we should be at a major advantage because of how low our currency is, she says. We're seeing a lot of our manufacturers actually moving their investment to their entire facility away from Canada or down to the United States, points Tauser. Canada also faces higher tax rates, housing affordability challenges, and much smaller domestic market than the US, she says. If you're manufacturing your item and most of your sales are to the US and those are at risk, that's a serious consideration if you want to stay here, Tauser says. Reducing regulatory barriers could help improve Canada's competitiveness and productivity, she adds. It's not just an operational inefficiency, it's actually become a real drag on our productivity. So there you have it, kids and cubs, different assessments of the Canadian economy and how things are going on. Even here in these various opinions, you see some contradictions like Judy Chin had pointed out. But again, it depends on, a lot of that depends on the timelines that you are looking at. And the Bank of Canada will tend to look both on short, medium, and longer term, well, on both. On all three, shorter, medium, and longer term timelines, and have cases and scenarios for all of those. Whereas in a news article, sometimes you just take the headline data, or you choose to look for the range of months that allows you to report the story you want to. Not all journalists do that, but you. The difference between reporting on a sharp swing in a number that happens in a month or two, like we saw the oil prices drop from over 100 down to the low 60s and then back up into the 80s, and then looking at a trend that has grown over 2 or 3 years time, right? If we look at housing, for example, a lot of people want to look at just the last 10 years, but when you consider that the major cuts to affordable housing started in the Mulroney era and weren't fixed by Chrétien Martin and weren't fixed by Harper, and Justin Trudeau finally came in and said, okay, finally we'll do something to fix it, even though housing is not our responsibility, but because the provinces haven't done it, we will do something. And now all of a sudden we're looking again at some purpose-built housing that is affordable, which we haven't had for quite a long time. It isn't a 10-year problem. If you go and look at that data, that started way back in the 80s, right? So sometimes you need to understand the overall context of what's going on to know how broad a section of time you need to look at in order to be able to provide a proper analysis of what's going on. So that's what we have with the economy. Now, the other things that are going on here. I saw somebody in the chat mention something about the bridge, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I think I noted something about that in some notes, and maybe I need to find that. Because it would be a good time to bring it up. Yes. This is what I noticed about the bridge specifically, since we were talking about it the other day. I listened to a video by someone who has experience in this field, who has a channel. It's called Large Man Abroad, specifically, but has some experience in economics, and was looking at this deal, particularly from the US perspective here, and noticed that what is happening in the deal, as Mark Carney has structured it, is called DBFOM. A DBFOM waterfall: design, build, finance, operate, and maintain. And basically what they call this the waterfall is that these are all the costs that need to be taken care of before we start talking about any profits. that are going to be split. The United States are presenting a slightly different version from what Canada is saying. Again, you have to understand that what they're doing is for the domestic market. We also mentioned yesterday about, the Ambassador Bridge does need to survive in some capacity, right? And the thing is that the Gordie Howe Bridge, once it is open, runs the risk of the Canadian boycott mentality transferring to it, and a whole bunch of Canadian um, people not wanting to use it, preferring to use the new bridge instead. So there will be a decrease in traffic on that bridge. Probably one of the reasons that the United States, especially the federal government, was looking to get some money now is they were hoping that they might be able to use that to compensate the Maroon family somehow for the lack or the drop in travel. So that's going to happen. The other thing as well is just there's some convenience. The Gordie Howe International Bridge is going to be a direct link between the 401 and the I-75, which cuts down travel time. It also results in a lot of potential savings because, for example, if you're on the Ambassador Bridge and you are in a situation of congestion, you're probably not getting paid if you're the trucker, because usually if the wheels are not rolling, you're not getting paid, number one. But for the companies as well, those trucks are idle while they are waiting there. And the cost of diesel is kind of up there these days. So, that's probably not going to work very well. He describes this, the deal, as the ultimate sovereign flex because Canada isn't a regional bank looking for a quick quarterly flip to satisfy shareholders. They're a G7 nation building a 100-year economic artery. The structure created a debt waterfall so incredibly steep that net profit will never reach the bottom for the next 15 years. All this while the Trump administration was so desperately looking for a quick win to feed to the Fox News chyron. Canada was playing the landlord game. And some people are going to say, huh? What about the US veto on any tolls increase over 10%? That's the one thing the Trump camp is parading around as proof of American dominance. But the entire thing is just a decorative hood ornament. You don't hike tolls 10% on major international trade corridors unless you want to intentionally crash your own economy. Canada gave away a regulatory right that they're never really going to use. And they're doing that just to make the Americans feel like they're sitting in the driver's seat of a car that Ottawa owns. Wow. So it then goes to talk about the oligarchic leverage from the Maroon family that was unleashed at this time there. And that all of this is being done so that a billionaire could keep on collecting tolls. But he goes on to say, but by handing the U.S. administration that completely toothless, financially hollow 15-year PR victory, Ottawa broke the blockade, right? They cleared the runway for the hard opening on July 27th. And this is where the working class, especially the Canadian working class, finally gets its revenge, because the moment the barriers lift on the Gordie Howe Bridge, the Ambassador Bridge's monopoly is dead. It's going to face an immediate devastating cross-border boycott from Canadians. It's right? No Canadian or American truck driver with a deadline is going to choose a traffic light choke decaying private bridge when a direct highway to highway public connection is sitting right next to it. The Maroons spent millions trying to buy a permanent monopoly, and the Canadian government just handed the working class the sledgehammer to smash it to pieces. Dang. He gets to a point in here that I want to play for you with regard to the bridge, because he sums it up really well. And this is one of the things that I've mentioned on the show before, but not recently. When he's mentioning it, or he mentioned it earlier in the comments there that I read to you, is that when they say run your country like a business goes from quarter to quarter to quarter, trying to maximize profits and shareholder return. And a business is trying not to go bankrupt, right? A country, right, doesn't have to worry about just the next business cycle, or doesn't have to worry about going bankrupt in 10 years. They can borrow money, like, for example, that nuclear plan that we're looking to do, where we're going to be borrowing money and then having people pay it back over 50 or 60 or maybe 70 years, because a nuclear plant will last long enough to supply 4 generations. So let's pass the costs over to those 4 generations. We're building a bridge that we hope is going to last a long, 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 long time. Or we have built a bridge, right? So we can either try to extract as much as we can out of it right now, even before it opens, or we could turn around and say, okay, yeah, sure, we'll give you this meaningless little concession now, and let's open it. Because in the article that I read yesterday about Dean Blundell, by establishing that fund where money goes in to, right, this regional economic development fund that the United States and the Donald Trump gets to spend however he wants in that area in order to boost, if he does spend it in that area, because, with Donald Trump, a contract is just a suggestion, but spends it in there, right? At the moment when the waterfall of obligations is the highest, versus breaking that monopoly, making sure that that power is never there ever again, increasing trade between both countries, right? When you look at those things together, the size of the hit that we are taking in order to set ourselves up for the next 100 years, it's a rounding error at the end of the day. So there's a term that he uses in this response here, or this section that I wanted to show you, that's really good. And I made a note of it because I will be using it often, and I hope that you will too when it comes to these types of things.
Good. Now, ultimately, this entire saga exposes the profound divergence between 2 distinct philosophies of governance and leadership. Right? The micro-strategic approach from the Trump administration is completely reactionary. It's transactional. And it operates on a psychological deficit. It's a desperate need for immediate dominance. It views every international interaction as a professional wrestling cage match. And the goal of that cage match is just simply to extract a physical pound of flesh right now to prove to your base that you're winning. And it's highly effective for generating headlines. It really is. I mean, look at the effect that it's had in the conversation and the dialogue in Canada right now, where people are like, is it a win or is it a loss? But it's fundamentally incapable of managing macroeconomics, but because it can't see past tomorrow morning's news cycle. But Carney can. The American political machine has the attention span of a goldfish, and Trump needed a giant gold trophy in a press conference today to feel like a big boy. Right? Canada happily bought about a century of infrastructure by handing him a participation ribbon, because that's all it is. The macro-strategic approach, the Canadian approach, is quiet, it's clinical, and it's patient. It doesn't care about the optics of a temporary setback because it's anchored in generational horizons. It understands that true national power isn't derived from a volatile post on social media. It's derived from the compounding efficiency of physical infrastructure and the control of the capital stack. So, to the Canadian critics who are mourning this deal and claiming that Ottawa sold out, you really need to lift your eyes past the immediate horizon. Like I said, you got to zoom out and look at this. Stop reading the U.S. press releases. You just have to look at the ledger, right? Look at the waterfall, or look at the amortization schedule. The truth is, Canada didn't lose a war. They paid a nominal troll toll using entirely fake currency, essentially, to secure a multi-billion-dollar economic engine for the next century. Sometimes the ultimate way to win the game is to let your opponent celebrate a victory that only exists on paper. And remember that right now, this is a war on sovereignty, on Canadian sovereignty that's being launched by the Trump administration. And in a war, you're never going to win every battle. And Mark Carney knows that. That's why he's willing to give a symbolic victory to Trump. Because, as we said, Mark Carney's plays have not really been to the immediate. That's why you do see, some things suffering. But at the same time, you see job growth double in Canada while it bleeds out in America. So don't get wrapped up in the loss of a battle when you're doing everything that you can possibly do to win the war of sovereignty in the future, and to make sure that Canada is Canada always and never a 51st state. Elbows up as always, everyone. We love you guys.
There you go. Kits and Cubs. So in that statement, right, comments that I made frequently about the Prime Minister playing the long game. This is where this really shows up at this particular time. We're playing the absolute long game here. Hopefully, I thought I did note the words that I was looking for. But it's anchored, our strategy is anchored in generational horizons rather than in winning the current nanosecond. Mark, we saw it with the national food strategy, right? Right. We got the income tax cut that happened first. Then we got the food and essentials benefit, which was a reworking of the GST credit to give a boost and a bridge up until the time that hopefully the recently announced national food sovereignty and food security strategy has some time to kick in. Immediate, middle term, long term, right? He's making a lot of decisions in that sense with some of these decisions, right? The whole pipeline with Alberta, yes, there is the pipeline, but it's really about moving forward the electrification strategy with the agreement to introduce some nuclear into Alberta, with the agreement to have the interties, right? It's an opportunity to develop some IP and carbon capture that might be able, and storage that might be able to be sold. It's the opportunity to the whole national unity opportunity that's underpinning the entire discussion, right? There's more than just the pipeline going on there, right? It's almost like the pipeline is a pretext to be able to do all those other things. Establishing the carbon market, for example, lowering methane emissions. So, Mark Carney has no problem giving Danielle Smith everything she wants, as Max Fawcett from the National Observer calls it, and nothing she needs. Because in the long run, if he gets the nuclear in Alberta and gets the interties and gets the pathways and gets all that other type of stuff, he can do so much more with that and build on that than he can do on the pipeline itself. So you're given some in order to move a whole other strategy of yours. Or in chess, you're sacrificing a piece in order to be able to make a move that's going to get you closer to checkmate, right? It's a little bit like that. Other things I wanted to mention today, there's been a rash of really, really weird stories over the last little bit about people doing some very strange things. The first we have for you here is that involves a former Liberal MP, I believe, Raj Grewal, his name is, and according to Tom Blackwell of the National Pest, it says that Ontario's, let me see if I can fix this up here, because the wording is a little small here. Ontario's legal regulator is moving to suspend the license of lawyer Raj Grewal as the former Liberal MP faces a slew of lawsuits accusing him, the law firm he founded, family members, and associates of millions of dollars in fraud and other wrongdoing. What's the deal with lawyers, man? The Law Society of Ontario is investigating charges that Grewal may have misappropriated trust money, participated in fraud, and failed to act with honor and integrity, the agency says in requesting the suspension. Quote, there are reasonable grounds arising out of the investigations to believe that there is a significant risk of harm to members of the public, the organization says. Devinder Singh Katra, a lawyer with RSG Law, the Mississauga, Ontario firm Grewal founded, faces similar action by the Law Society. A preliminary hearing in the two matters is scheduled for Monday at the separate Law Society tribunal. Peel Regional Police are also looking into some of the claims which revolve around various real estate transactions, according to a document filed by one of the accusers recently. Lawyers and real estate agents. Again, it's like, why is everybody some version of Donald Trump? Man. Jeez. Let's see here. The accusations have not been proven in court, and Grewal's lawyer says he denies any wrongdoing, attributing the lawsuits to a kind of falling out that can occur in commercial transactions. And at least 3 of the cases have already been settled, the lawyer said Monday. Grewal made headlines 8 years ago when he resigned his seat in the House of Commons and admitted to ringing up millions in gambling debts, playing blackjack at a casino across the river from the Parliament buildings. The RCMP later charged him with breach of trust. I remember that. Yes, that's true. Grewal was acquitted at trial, the judge saying prosecutors had failed to prove their chief allegation that he had traded on his government connections to obtain loans to cover his gambling debt. The ex-MP expressed relief as the case ended in 2023, saying he always believed he would be vindicated, quote, even though vindication has been incredibly delayed. 3 years later, the lawyer finds himself immersed in more legal and financial hot water, with at least 20 court actions claiming he or the firm he founded committed various transgressions. The accusations include failing to repay millions in mortgages and other loans, unilaterally erasing some of the debts or property posted as security from official records, and taking clients' money in trust but failing to pay off loans as requested or to give back the funds. One of the cases alleges that some of the proceeds of what turned out to be 3 fake checks totaling over $5 million ended up in the trust account of RSG Law. That case, which did not name him personally, has been settled out of court, say Grewal's lawyers Simon Beaver and Emma March. Judges in some cases froze RSG accounts and ordered seizures of homes owned by Grewal and his father, Aftar, also listed as a defendant in some of the cases. Bieber and March did not respond to specific allegations in the lawsuit, but said their client denies any wrongdoing. Quote, like any company involved in a large number of commercial transactions, and particularly in uncertain economic times, sometimes the parties have a falling out and litigation ensues, they said. Mr. Grewal's companies are the plaintiffs in several lawsuits and the defendants in several others. Mr. Grewal is working diligently to resolve all outstanding litigation in a manner that is fair to all involved. Lawyers for the plaintiff in the 3 cases could not be reached to confirm that they had been settled. Grewal's lawyers also say he sold RSG Law to Katra in 2023 and has had very limited involvement with the firm's day-to-day operations since. However, a paid, quote, advertorial in the Toronto Star last July depicts him as the driving force of the firm, whose initials match his own. As recently as December, the RSG Law website listed Grewal as the principal lawyer and Katra as an associate, a description echoed by one of the lawsuits. Grewal's Law Society page places him at RSG Law. Katra, defendant in several of the cases, said many significant suits have now been settled and that the rest are still being litigated, meaning he could not comment on them. Aftar Grewal could not be reached for comment. The deluge of lawsuits was first reported by The Pointer, an online news site based in Brampton. Gruel shocked constituents and political observers in November 2018 when he revealed that he had gambled and lost millions at Lac Limy Casino in Gatineau, Quebec. He says he eventually paid off the debts with help from friends and family members, but the RCMP charged him with trading on his government influence to get loans, an allegation the trial dismissed for lack of evidence. Gruel left political life and resumed his legal career, but last July he was publicly touting the success of RSG Law, a thriving legal enterprise he said had grown from one lawyer to a 40-person team. The firm was revolutionizing the way lawyers are compensated, charging clients an upfront capped fee rather than billing them for the number of hours worked, said the Toronto Star paid article. So there are no surprises, Gruel is quoted as saying in his article. For him, the piece says law is not only about legal acumen, but professionalism, trust, and presentation. Among the allegations as yet unproven against Gruel and RSG Law in recent lawsuits and court applications, in an action that Gruel's lawyers said he has now been settled, and that does not name the former MP, the Bank of Nova Scotia alleged that 3 TD Bank checks were deposited this April in a trust account of another law firm led by a lawyer who as recently as this January was listed as an RSG Law associate. The same day, the maximum amount allowed by the bank rules was withdrawn, $5.3 million. After checking with TD, Scotiabank discovered the checks were bogus and also concluded that about $3 million of the money had ended up in RSG's Law Trust account. RSG, represented by Katra, who called himself the firm's owner, said in an affidavit he had no idea the money had an illegal source. A judge ordered the RSL and RSG trust accounts frozen. RSG offered to pay the bank whatever was needed to make it whole, according to one court order. In another case, two brothers and their companies based in Georgetown, Ontario, alleged that RSG Law, with Gruel as its supervising lawyer and Katra as the associate, received $4.2 million in trust to pay off a mortgage at the Royal Bank that was to be replaced by one at the National Bank. RSG's Katra claimed to have given the Royal Bank a check for the amount, but never did. The plaintiffs charged in a suit filed this month, leaving them with two parallel mortgages to service. They accused the defendants of, quote, fraud and deceit, citing some of the other recent cases. They alleged it was not an isolated incident, but forms part of a broader and developing pattern of misappropriation of trust funds and dishonest conduct involving RSG Law, Katra, and Gruel. In another case, lenders alleged in another lawsuit that RSG Law and Katra helped a company sell property it owned after the company's $4 million mortgage was mistakenly deleted from land titles records, unbeknownst to the lender. The mortgage was never paid off and the money ended up with Avtar Gruel, one of the company's directors, according to preliminary decisions from Justice Frederick Myers of Ontario Superior Court. He imposed what he called an extraordinary order freezing the defendant's assets due to the evidence of behavior, quote, approaching to or amounting to fraud. No statement of defense has been filed. And finally, in another of the cases that Gruel's lawyers say has now been settled, a group of lenders alleged they loaned Gruel, RSG Law, Avtar Gruel, and various associated companies $107 million over several years, only to discover in the last 2 years that no security was registered for some of the loans and that other property posted as security was deleted without the lender's approval. The same security was used to borrow more money they charge. By the time their court action was filed earlier this month, they say they were still owed $64 million and had no corresponding security. Due to the RSG's group, Due to the RSG's group's gross negligence and or fraud, the lenders, quote, now stand to lose their entire investment, they alleged. Details of the settlement have yet to appear in the online court file. So that happened. Then this happened. According to CTV News' Kyla Rosen, a former Manitoba MP and Dauphin mayor has been arrested following months. Try that again. A former Manitoba MP and Dauphin mayor has been arrested following a months-long firearm trafficking investigation. Inky Mark, 78, is facing a slew of charges including firearm trafficking, possession of a firearm with a tampered serial number, and possession of property obtained by crime over $5,000. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with Inky Mark, he was a member of the House of Commons, representing Manitoba riding of Dauphin Swan River Marquette from 1997 to 2010, 13 years. A member of the Conservative Party of Canada, he frequently disagreed with the party's positions and criticized Leader and Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Mark previously served on Dauphin's City Council. So Dauphin was in the House of Commons before Stephen Harper came along and won in 2006. Mark was first elected to the House of Commons in the federal election of 1997, running as a candidate of the Reform Party. The guy from the Law and Order Party did this. It's incredible. The guy who won his seat in 2006, by the way, running on accountability. Okay. Let's keep going. So, facing a slew of charges, including firearm trafficking, possession of a firearm with a tampered serial number, and possession of a property obtained by crime over $5,000. Mark's arrest comes after a lengthy investigation that began in March when RCMP learned of firearm-related charges laid in the United States against a 73-year-old man from the Dauphin area. While executing a search warrant related to the case, Mounties said they found and seized guns that were bought by a second suspect but never lawfully transferred. On July 7th, officers executed 2 search warrants at the home of the second suspect, who has been identified as Inky Mark. During this search, they seized, I hope you're sitting down for this, 439 guns. $439. Who needs that? Ammunition and an antique cannon and over an antique cannon and over $300,000. Police expect it will take several more weeks to document the evidence and determine how many of the guns were illegally possessed. At this point, Mounties have determined that at least 3 guns were illegally trafficked and 1 had its serial number tampered with. Mark has been released from custody on a release order. He has no previous criminal convictions and has a court date set for August 11th in Dauphin, according to the spokesperson for the courts. The investigation continues. The charges have not been proven in court. 439. Okay. Yay. All right. The next story that we have, this one involves a public servant, and it's by Christine Neese of CBC News. A former federal scientist in an let's try that again. I'll just start over. The next story that we have is about a federal public servant, and this is by Christine Neese of CBC News. A former federal scientist in an alleged foreign interference case is accused of copying more than 2,000 documents off a shared departmental server to share with China as his lifelong career was nearing its end, CBC News has learned. Dennis Liu faces trial in Ottawa next year. He researched clean energy with Natural Resource Canada's Centre for Mineral Energy Technology for decades, specializing in carbon capture and decarbonization. He was fired during the week of his scheduled retirement in August 2023. The 65-year-old is charged under the criminal code with 2 counts of unauthorized use of a computer and 1 count of breach of trust relating to his federal duties. The alleged breach dates from the day Liu began a leave of absence to travel to Taiwan and China in 2023 to the date of his arrest in 2024. He had recently returned to Canada after living in China for about a year following his departure from Natural Resources Canada. Courthouse records prepared by the Crown and Defense obtained by CBC News show there is no evidence of Liu actually sharing the documents he downloaded. Instead, the Crown alleges that Liu's devices seized during the execution of a search warrant at his Ottawa home contain evidence of questionable affiliations and employment with Chinese companies, universities, and academics against Natural Resource Canada's internal rules, and that Liu intended to share the documents with China, the records state. The allegations against Liu are unproven. The Canadian Security and Intelligence Service briefed Natural Resources Canada about Liu at least 3 times between 2000 and 2021, the court records show. The last CSIS briefing was made to Natural Resources Canada's Chief of Security in February 2021. That prompted an internal investigation in January 2023 to monitor, search, and seize information from Lou's computer using specific word phrases to see if any of Lou's conduct was, quote, actionable and to determine the credibility of the CSIS flags, the records state. In February 2023, Lou took a leave of absence to travel, and the following month he told his manager that he intended to retire in August that year, according to the records. It's alleged that Lou sent nearly 2,000 emails from his work email account to his personal email account while he was in China, the records state. Natural Resources Canada cut Lou's access to his work email and its servers in early June 2023, and when Lou returned to Canada at the end of that month, he asked about it. A manager ordered Lou's access reinstated so his retirement could be processed. On July 7th, 2023, Lou allegedly copied 2,414 documents from a Natural Resources Canada shared server onto a device, and on August 9th, 2023, a further 188 documents from the shared device onto a separate device. Natural Resources Canada officials interviewed Lou about the copied documents on August 17, 2023. That same day, the department told the RCMP about the findings of its internal investigation into Lou, the records state. A year later, he was arrested and charged by members of Ottawa INSET, an RCMP-led team of law enforcement and intelligence partners that handles threats to national security. He had just returned to Ottawa after spending his first year of retirement living in China. Lou was released from custody after he had a surety promised to pay $10,000 each if Lou leaves Ontario, applies for a passport or any other travel permits or documents, or violates any other release conditions. Arguments and allegations that defense lawyers Reem Zaya and Michael Nesbitt are making include the following. Natural Resources Canada was acting as an agent of the state and extension of law enforcement from the moment it began surveilling Lou, and that Lou had an expectation of privacy as an employee, the records state. The department shared drive wasn't password protected. Lou had authorized access to it, and employees at the department routinely use USBs to take work home. The department has hired and collaborated with foreign nationals in the past, including from China. They say Lou had been working on publications with the Chinese on the department's behalf, and that before he left, he told Natural Resources Canada that he intended to finish them. Arguments and allegations made by Assistant Crown Attorney Tim Radcliffe include the federal government is highly regulated and increasingly security sensitive given the risks posed by aggressive threat actors, including China, and that a reasonable person wouldn't agree that Lou should have expected privacy at work. The Communication Security Establishment National Cyber Threat Assessment for 2025-26 says China's expansive and aggressive cyber program has global cyber surveillance, espionage, and attack capabilities, and is the most comprehensive cybersecurity threat facing Canada today, and have compromised and maintained access to multiple government networks over the past 5 years, collecting communications and other valuable information. A 2023 CSIS report says China, quote, has repeatedly shown that it is willing to use clandestine and deceptive means to acquire intellectual property and advanced technologies from Canada and its allies, and is actively attempting to recruit Canadians with desirable expertise through social media platforms and talent recruitment firms. And finally, Lou did not tell Natural Resources Canada before he left that he intended to complete publications with Chinese academics, and that dealings with Chinese academics and universities were approached with caution at the department. Lou's jury trial in Ottawa Superior Court is scheduled for January. And finally, because I like to save the best for last, this one is might make you lick your fingers. According to the Globe and Mail's Matthew Skase, it would seem that another lawyer, someone who's been having trouble with his law society, has some other issues. Mr. Jeffrey Rath, or the Black Hat Cowboy, as Lisa refers to him often, says here, a judge has temporarily frozen more than $8.5 million in assets. How does this guy have $8.5 million in assets? But okay, a judge has temporarily frozen more than $8.5 million in assets belonging to Jeffrey Rath, a lawyer and prominent voice in Alberta's separatist movement, and his legal firm after a First Nation alleged misappropriation of money that he was overseeing as the band's trustee. Oh boy. Alberta Court of King's Bench Justice Michael Marion issued the freezing order known as a Mareva injunction at a virtual court hearing on Friday. The order will last at least until a Wednesday hearing when a judge will consider whether to extend it pending further proceedings. I believe I saw Kit Uncover report that it was indeed extended. A Mareva injunction is a rare but powerful legal tool that allows for a plaintiff's lawyer to press for funds to be blocked. In 2022, it was used by Ontario Superior Court judge to freeze millions of dollars in cash and cryptocurrency raised for the COVID-19 convoy protests in Ottawa. So Mr. Rath may be familiar with the move. Just saying. Mr. Rath has become one of the most vocal boosters of Alberta independence, a campaign that has been pushing for a binding secession vote for more than a year. Premier Danielle Smith has scheduled an October 19th referendum that will ask Alberta voters to pick between remaining in Canada or beginning the legal process to hold a second binding referendum. Justice Marion's ruling was in response to an application by Northern Alberta's Tall Cree First Nation to remove Mr. Rath and his company, Rath Professional Corporation, from overseeing the band's roughly $15 million trust. The fund was created after the nation reached a settlement with the federal government in 2017 over broken agricultural promises made more than a century ago. The funds are meant to be distributed to the Tall Cree members when they turn 18 years old. Court documents obtained by the Globe and Mail show that the Tall Cree First Nation alleges that Mr. Rath moved $8.5 million in November 2025 from the trust to his private corporation. The same amount an Alberta Court of King's Bench judge ordered him to repay Tall Cree over a fee dispute that the Alberta Court of Appeal upheld last November. So it seems he was told to repay $8.5 million to the Tall Cree First Nation, and instead of doing that, removed $8.5 million from the Tall Cree First Nations trust and put it in his own personal account to make sure he would get paid. Which you're not allowed to do. Quote, Rath has refused to disclose the whereabouts of these funds. Their whereabouts are currently unknown, says the application filed on July 8th by Tall Cree Chief Rupert Minine. The First Nation also alleges that Mr. Rath recently disclosed financial statements showing that he charged the band roughly $6.4 million in administrative and professional fees between 2024 and 2025. It describes the fees as, quote, unprecedented. Edward Holt, legal counsel for Mr. Rath, declined to comment. Chief Menine's legal brief references a July 3rd email from Mr. Rath that says, quote, my position remains that all funds were properly paid out pursuant to the terms of the trust. In an affidavit filed on June 25th, Mr. Rath said the fees were the product of earlier legal actions instigated by Chief Menine. Tall Creek First Nation pointed to its court filings when asked for comment on the Mareva injunction. Over the past year and a half, Mr. Rath has appeared on Fox News in the U.S. to travel the province touting the benefits of independence and met with members of the United States Department to discuss Alberta's potential secession. He has also appeared in court to defend against legal attempts to quash a petition aimed at triggering a secession vote. In May, an Alberta judge struck down the petition initiated by independence organization Stay Free Alberta from being approved, citing the duty to consult First Nations. However, an Alberta Court of Appeal judge ruled last month that Elections Alberta could begin the process of counting the 301,000 signatures that Mr. Rath says were collected this winter. Mr. Rath has spent much of his career representing First Nations, including in several claims against the federal government. So this is the kind of piece of work this guy is. He spent his career representing First Nations and now wants to take Alberta out of Canada, thus changing the borders of the nations he got rich serving. And now turns out, it seems, that he may have been overbilling them. And in addition, when complained about it and ordered to return them money, then just taking the money out of the account and putting it somewhere where nobody can find it to make sure he gets to keep it. Allegedly, based on my understanding of what's written here. Imagine having so little respect for the people that made you rich, then stealing from them and trying to change the borders of their nation, when you should know better because you represented them. So surely Mr. Rath understands what duty to consult really is. Wow. Amazing. Jeez. Mr. Rath has spent much of his career representing First Nations, including in several claims against the federal government. In 2017, he represented Tall Cree in a $57 million settlement with Ottawa over broken agricultural promises earlier in Confederation. It is one of several settlements that the federal Liberal government has agreed to pay First Nations over the past decade. Tall Cree's fee agreement with Mr. Rath required the band to pay him and his firm $11.5 million, a 20% slice of the final settlement. Jeez. In 2018, however, Tall Cree successfully challenged the fee in the Alberta Court of King's Bench, and Mr. Rath was ordered to pay back $8.5 million, allowing him to keep the remaining $3 million, which is a lot of money already. The judge overseeing the case called the fee, quote, unreasonable. Mr. Rath's appeal was dismissed by the Alberta Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court of Canada in 2023 declined to hear his challenge to the decision. And if he was as good a lawyer as he claims to be, he could have probably foreseen that that would have been the case and saved himself a lot of effort and money with those appeals. Mr. Rath has continued as trustee of Tall Cree First Nation, responsible for distributing the settlement money to the band members when they turn 18. Why? Especially if this happened in 2018. Oh, well. Okay. Tall Cree first sought a Mariva injunction in late June when, according to its legal brief, Mr. Rath turned over financial documents showing that Rath PC had charged $6 million in administrative and professional fees since 2024. Chief Menine said Mr. Rath had stopped providing audited financial statements after 2020. In response, on June 26, Court of King's Bench Justice Shane Parker temporarily removed Mr. Rath as trustee, replacing him with BMO Trust Company, but declined to impose a freezing order. After receiving all financial documents, BMO found that in November 2025, Rath PC moved $8,518,075 from a trust account to its own account, precisely the same amount courts had ordered Mr. Rath repay Tall Cree's trust, the documents say. BMO also found that on June 26, 2026, the day of the urgent chambers hearing that saw Mr. Rath removed as trustee, Rath PC wired $106,000 to an unknown source. Altogether, approximately two-thirds of the value of the trust assets have been dissipated by Rath and Rath PC since 2024, says Chief Menine's court application. In his decision, Justice Marion said he believed that there was reason to believe Mr. Rath's asset will be dissipated or removed before any judgment in the proceeding is awarded. Mr. Rath will be allowed to spend up to $10,000 until Wednesday's hearing to cover living expenses, along with $100,000 for legal fees, the judge wrote. The Mariva order will be reviewed by another judge this Wednesday. Counsel for Mr. Rath is expected to deliver responding evidence by Tuesday. I'm just going to go check out here. 13 hours ago, CBC. According to Michelle Bellefontaine, a judge agreed on Wednesday to extend and expand an order that temporarily freezes the assets of lawyer Jeff Rath, one of the leaders of Alberta's separatist movement. Rath and his law firm must provide lawyers for Tall Cree First Nation and Chief Rupert Menine with sworn evidence identifying their assets and where they are located by July 27th. Rath and his firm are ordered to provide sworn evidence and financial statements by August 4th that accounts for all the fees, charges, and amounts paid out to Tall Cree First Nation's trust account. Rath has been further ordered to undergo examination under oath about his assets on or before August 11th. The order is in effect until 60 days after the judge makes a final ruling into the matter, or until the Tall Cree First Nation either discontinues the matter or has it dismissed, or if Rath provides $15 million to the receiver to be held in trust pending the outcome of the legal proceedings. The decision is the latest chapter in a years-long battle between Rath and the Tall Cree First Nation in northern Alberta. The First Nation alleges Rath misappropriated millions of dollars in trust funds that his firm has overseen since 2017. Rath calls the allegations false. In an email to Menine's lawyer, he said the First Nation agreed the fee arrangement was reasonable when it was approved by the Band Council. A temporary Mariva injunction was initially granted by Alberta Court of King's Bench Justice Michael Marion during an emergency hearing on Friday. The judge agreed that a strong prima facie case existed to grant the temporary order. Mariva orders are rarely used legal tools used to freeze assets if there's a concern that the respondent in the legal proceeding will move or hide assets prior to a judgment by the court. Alberta Court of King's Bench Justice John Gill extended the injunction on Wednesday, telling the court he agreed with Marion's reason for granting the initial order. Gill also appointed an investigative receiver to trace money that was removed from the trust. Matthew Salmon, a lawyer representing Menine, said in a written statement to CBC News that his client will take all necessary and lawful steps to protect the rights and interests of the trust's beneficiaries, many of whom are minors, and to pursue appropriate recovery of trust assets from all responsible parties. CBC News has reached out to Rath and his lawyers for reaction. In 2017, the Tall Creek First Nation made Rath's law firm the sole trustee of a trust holding the $57.6 million settlement the First Nation received from the federal government after the two parties settled an agricultural benefits claim. Rath levied an $11.5 million or 20% fee for his services. The First Nation asked the court in 2018 if that amount was reasonable. The subsequent ruling found that these fees were excessive, a conclusion that was upheld by the Court of Appeal of Alberta. Rath has since been ordered to return $8.5 million to the trust. The First Nation has made numerous attempts to get the money back. According to court documents, Menine asked for the rarely used Mariva order over concerns that the funds would be dissipated, transferred, concealed, or placed beyond reach before this matter can be heard in the ordinary course. Rath's firm was removed as the trustee on June 26. The judge appointed BMO Trust Company to take over. Account statements forwarded by BMO Trust Company shows that in February 2025, $8.5 million was deposited into an investment account. Rath's firm had opened the account to comply with the judge's order to hold the money separately, pending the outcome of an appeal by the Tall Creek First Nation to have the money go back to them. On November 4th, the First Nations appeal was dismissed by the Court of Appeal of Alberta, which meant the original order to have the money repaid to the trust account was upheld. Bank statements show that 13 days later, Rath's firm wrote a check for $8.5 million on the trust account to itself. The trust's financial statements for 2024 and 2025 were released to the First Nation on June 1st in response to a court order. The First Nation said in court documents that was the first time it learned Rath had allegedly charged the trust other administrative and professional fees, totaling $6,112,960. Wow. So yeah, with that whole separatist group, we have David Parker, right, who has fines, about 120,000 fines to pay back Elections Alberta, I would assume, in this case. And he hasn't done it. And then we had the whole list leak thing, which will probably resolve in more trouble. Then we have Mr. Dennis Modry. If you remember, we talked to you about him. Dennis Modry, co-founder of the Alberta Prosperity Project. Wonder if he was a politician as well. Just taking a look here. No, was not a politician. Never had it. He's a former heart surgeon. Okay. Dennis Modry, who refused to pay back more than $1.3 million that a judge found he misappropriated from elderly relatives. Misappropriated the money from the joint bank account of his aunt and uncle who suffered from Alzheimer's and dementia, respectively, and ordered him to pay the money back with interest. That was in March 2025. March 2026, that had not happened yet. It says that in 2024, according to the court decision, Modry was given power of attorney for his uncle Fred Bodnar and Bodnar's wife Laurette, who have both since died. Holmes is Laurette's niece. The order, I guess that's the person who who started started the lawsuit here. The order details how he took large sums out of their accounts, including savings and mutual funds, as well as the proceeds from the sale of their car and Parksville, BC house, writing checks to himself. Among other expenditures, the document says Modry also rented a condo in Scottsdale, Arizona for 6 months, bought 24 bottles of wine, and lost $9,000 that he invested in cryptocurrency. The judge determined Modry violated his obligations under the power of attorney by withdrawing the couple's money without adequate documentation or proper consent between 2014 and 2019. So yeah, only the best people. These are the people in whom fellow Canadians are placing their trust. Someone who stole $1.3 million from his family was ordered to pay it back and said, nah. A man who is accused of stealing $8.5 million and then another 6, it would appear, from an Indigenous band or First Nation that hired him to represent them, and then made him the person in charge of their legal trust. And a guy who has $120,000 in fines with Elections Alberta from a previous incident, and who has not paid them back. Who used, allegedly, voter information he was not entitled to have, and decided to leak it to the entire world. Great cast of characters you got, Seppies. Great cast of characters. And in that, a public servant who appears to be wanting to inform China of what were going on, a former CPC MP who is armed to the teeth, and a former liberal MP who also decided to do funny things with money. And if that wasn't enough, it seems that Canadian citizens decided to get involved, because yesterday there was some behavior in Nova Scotia that should never be happening under any circumstance whatsoever. Yesterday, this happened, and I will let CBC bring us the news. There might be some loud sounds if you happen to be listening on headphones, so you might want to adjust them down a little bit. But here is the piece as brought to you by the CBC.
The Premier of Nova Scotia is inside this car, surrounded while trying to leave an event at Acadia University, blocked by angry people protesting all sorts of things: budget cuts, fracking, and calling for stronger Mi'kmaq rights.
We refuse to allow our homelands to be destroyed.
The protest began like this.
I'm supporting my community library.
But turned into this, the windshield smashed with Tim Houston inside the car for several minutes until the RCMP escorted him back into the building. He eventually left the campus in a marked RCMP vehicle.
It seems incredibly unprofessional that you've got the top elected official in the province going to an event. I mean, normally I assume there would be some sort of intelligence generated about the potential for protests at a university, and it seems like he was completely unprotected.
The RCMP say they arrested one man but later released him without charges. This man says he was taken into custody but insists he was protesting peacefully.
They grabbed me, dragged me across the pavement, and smashed me face first into a wall. Proceeded to put handcuffs on me so tight I still have marks on them.
CBC News asked the RCMP specifically about the man's allegations, but did not hear back by deadline.
We are moving in the right direction as a province.
This was Houston's first event in a speaking tour to chambers of commerce across the province. As Houston was speaking, those inside looking out saw the crowd grow.
Let's be honest. What happened after the event today was not peaceful. It was violence.
The Prime Minister said in Canada we have the right to protest peacefully. There is no excuse to resort to violence and intimidation. The Premier's event in Yarmouth Thursday is going ahead.
Well, I hope nothing happens tomorrow. I mean, we're pretty peaceful people on a good day. I think precautions will be put in place.
Exactly what precautions remain unclear. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
All right, so there you go, kids and cubs. Always unacceptable. We should not be doing that. Politicians, whatever we may think of them, good, bad, or ugly, are elected to represent us. Now, no matter how good or they are at the job or how much they suck at the job, and currently in Nova Scotia, it would appear that people are tending to believe that Mr. Houston sucks at the job, because recent public opinion polling seems to indicate that he is taken a rather sharp fall in how appreciated he is. In fact, he would be in a minority situation today if an election were held. I'm not sure what's going on here with my screen. There we go. Sorry, no, he would not be in a minority situation if an election were held today. Sorry, I was incorrect there. But there are some public opinion pollings that are indicating that he would lose the election to the NDP and Claudia Chender. No matter how well you think that politicians are doing the job of representing us, the politicians represent us. When you physically attack and intimidate the politician, you are doing the equivalent of punching yourself in the face. We have the wonderful situation in Canada where we have a lot of access to our politicians, right? They can march in a parade. You can be walking down the street and bump into them, and you can have a conversation. You could be hanging out at the local pub, and they pop in, and whoops, you get a picture with them without like 75,000 rolls of security. You can actually shake someone's hand, and if you get their ear for a minute and a half, tell them what your number one concern is. Do we want to lose that? Do we want good politicians to decide not to enter the field because they fear that stuff like this would happen? You can protest. You can get creative in your protests. Right? I keep on bringing the example back in the days of the HIV crisis. People would have remember those protests called sit-ins? They would have die-ins. They would just lay down, and people would make chalk outlines of them like this, and they made their point that way. There were ways to humiliate, to embarrass, to use activism to get people to come to the table that did not involve surrounding the car, swarming it, busting the windshield. This all started as a protest against funding cuts for a library, if I'm not mistaken. Very peaceful. A lot of people showed up. A lot of people. Certain number of people showed up. But by the time that was over, there were people that joined in from many other groups with different agendas. And all of a sudden, it wasn't anymore about funds for a library, but it's about potential violence and threats and intimidation. Whatever causes you had, the original cause of this, which had been well protested, that cause goes out the window. Almost nobody's talking about that. Almost nobody's talking about that. And whatever cause they came here with to try to add to that, well, they certainly didn't do it any favors. This doesn't happen. This doesn't help. It doesn't help anyone. The incident reportedly happened at Acadia University in Wolfville, Nova Scotia. The premier, who was visiting and addressing local chambers of commerce in the province, was leaving the venue after Wednesday's event with the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce. Quote, following that event, an extreme faction amongst a group of protesters turned the event violent, a statement from the premier's office reads. In trying to leave the venue, the premier's vehicle, along with his staff's vehicle, were swarmed by rioters, preventing them from leaving. These criminals blocked them in, were pushing law enforcement, climbing onto the car the premier was in, and smashed the windshield with the premier in the car. According to some news reports, that white car was a decoy car that the premier was being ushered into. They had put a car that looked official up in the front to sort of distract people, but people actually saw him leaving and get in that one and then swarmed the car. So there you go. The Premier's office thanked the RCMP for their swift response in what was a very volatile situation. The statement goes on to say that while the Premier will listen and engage during respectful conversations, quote, bad actors who damage property and put lives at risk do nothing to advance constructive dialogue. RCMP told Global News that officers responded to a report of concerns for safety at the university and that the Premier and members of his party returned to the building from their vehicles while police officers managed the situation. According to RCMP, no injuries were reported and a man was arrested but later released without charges. In a Thursday update, Kings District RCMP said part of the investigation, officers are trying to identify the people who are believed to have been involved in impeding the departure of the vehicle occupied by the Premier and staff, as well as those responsible for damaging the vehicle. Protesters appeared to take issue with budget cuts to the arts, impending library closures in the area, and environmental concerns. Joey Brooks, who filmed the confrontation between the protesters and the Premier's staff in RCMP, said he's personally concerned about environmental issues, mining projects, and Indigenous rights. He says the Premier hasn't made himself available for discussions. We, as people who are treaty people and are wanting to stand for the treaty right and wanting to have our voice for democracy and have our chance to be heard, because all of these legislations or policies that are being put forward are not allowing the actual true voices of our people, he said. Tim Houston, as himself, was not in any manner of danger today. He was just denying access for us to talk. Brooks also disputes the RCMP's assertion that no one was hurt, alleging 2 protesters were injured, one during the address by police and another by the vehicle carrying the Premier. Prime Minister Mark Carney weighed in Wednesday evening, saying in a statement he condemned the violence. Quote, in Canada, we have the right to protest peacefully. There is no excuse to resort to violence and intimidation, he wrote. Thank you to the RCMP and law enforcement who responded quickly to keep everyone safe. In a statement, NDP leader Claudia Chender said while Nova Scotians have, quote, significant and valid concerns with the government's budget and decision-making, destruction of property and threats are, quote, never the best way forward. Nova Scotians can and must let their voices be heard and be part of the democratic process, and that can be done with clarity and strength in a safe and respectful way, she wrote. The Premier is meeting with chambers of commerce and Nova Scotia business owners in July and August. Wednesday's event in Wolfville was the first stop in this series of events. The next scheduled meeting is on Thursday in Yarmouth. A separate engagement process specific to the 27-28 budget will take place in the fall, according to the province. And just to give you a bit of an idea here, this was from July 14th. Rebecca Lau from Global News says here that 5 rural Nova Scotia libraries slated for permanent closure next week have been granted a reprieve and will now have enough funding to remain open until September 30th. A special meeting of the Annapolis Valley Regional Library Board was held Monday night. According to a social media post, the board approved using half of AVRL's remaining reserve funds to extend service at the Lawrencetown, Middleton, Kentville, Port Williams, and Hantsport branches. AVRL had $160,000 in its reserve funds. We will work as quickly as possible to organize staffing and sort out other logistical issues, AVRL wrote in a Facebook post. Please note that there may be service disruptions as we work through this process. Please check our website for open hours and service updates. The board initially announced on June 1st it would close the branches effective July 20th due to a lack of sustainable funding. The move sparked concern and protests from community members who use those spaces. The library board also voted Monday night to resend its request to all municipal funding partners for the full amount previously requested in order to extend service past September 30th. Kentville Mayor Andrew Zibian, who is a member of the board, told Global News on Monday afternoon he's hoping for collaboration with all local governments because he knows how vital the library service is. Quote, because the library is used by the entire region and just because you live in another area doesn't mean you don't use the Kentville branch or another branch, he said. So we all have to kind of look at this collectively, and if the province isn't going to commit any more money, then it's going to fall back on us. So that's what's going on there. And also want to give credit to It was also Rebecca Lau. So Rebecca Lau gave us the reporting for both of those. So I'm reading a lot of this reporting for the protest, and there's almost nothing mentioned about the library or the original reason for the protest. So all the people who put their effort into that had all of their efforts destroyed and had their story, their event stolen from them. This is not how you make friends and influence people. It's just not. So yeah, cautious optimism on the economy and reckless nihilism on the part of various political actors. All in the same show. Are you not entertained? Oh man, kids and cubs. I guess that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring. Word of mouth is priceless. Tell your peeps all about us, especially let them know why it is our content resonates with you. If you would like to help us, scan this QR code, which brings you to our YouTube page, where you can smash with our buttons like, share, and subscribe. Click on our notification bell and select all. And if you happen to be watching this show, not live, but on your telephone or tablet fewer than 7 days after the original broadcast, please swipe left on the comments section and offer us some hype points because it helps smaller shows like us gain more visibility and perhaps helps boost us a little bit. So thank you for all of your help with that. If you would like to encourage us financially, because we do incur some costs to bring the show to you, like for example, if you would like to be able to get us off Restream much faster than before February, hint, 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 hint. Right there. Right there. This thing right here can help with that. Right there. Scan that QR code and that will bring you to our coffee page, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word, where you will find the emergency hydration fund here at the Beaver Lodge, where you can fill my cup with Beaver Moistener, because a moist beaver is always a very happy beaver. Thank you so much. We get about 95 to 97% of your donation when you donate through coffee, and you can make a one-time or recurring donation that you are not locked into, that you can end anytime you want if you would like to offer us a little more stability. You can also donate via our YouTube page. We have stickers, super chats, and memberships available for you there. We get about 70% of your donation. And finally, kids and cubs, we have our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, if you are avoiding the US CE Tech Bros and would like to make a direct contribution that way. We're happy to accept it. And because we get 100% of your donation, there are no service fees that way. So it's win-win-win. If you are not able to contribute financially, you can contribute in word by using that same email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, and sending us your thoughts on the show, good, bad, or ugly, some suggestions for guests, your good news, which helps us with the doom scrolling, and any questions you have about politics or about how we put the show together that you would like us to answer. So thank you for all of that. If you want to reach us via our socials, at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, also on the shitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, our original home. We have the Beaver Bites Substack. We have the DamFam Discord. We have the True North Eager Beaver Instagram, run by Kit Uncover, who frequently does our clips. Thank you so much for that. And of course, we have the comment section right here on our YouTube page, which is the place where you're most likely to find us, and most likely to have us actually see your comment and read it if you leave it there. We do read everything, even though we're not able to get back to everyone, and we thank you for taking the time to send us that kind of stuff. Also remember our hashtags, kids who cook, kids who craft, and kids who cultivate, because sometimes we just need some inspiration, and we thank you for providing it. All right, let's see. Because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs, we have a few petitions for you to take some time and look at. We first have ourcommons.ca petition number E7395, which calls upon the House to stop funding Stornoway as an official residence for the leader of the opposition. The link is included in the chat right there for you kids and cubs, and you can go check that out. And we are currently at 25,385 signatures. This closes on July 30th. We also have the change.org petition for you kids and cubs that is hopefully going to succeed and encourage CBC to keep some form of hockey night in Canada on Saturday nights on the network. So there you go. You can share or click on that link to make that happen. And that one, Kids and Cubs, has 16,030 signatures on it. And then last but not least, as we had told you yesterday, you can donate to the Red Cross Manitoba Floods Appeal, where every $1 donated will become $2 to support individuals, families, and communities affected by the Manitoba floods. And you can do that by going to this site here that I'm going to put up in the chat for you, kids and cubs. And that site, for those who will be listening on podcast when we're able to get them up, is at give.redcross.ca/page/26MBFLA. And you can also contact, if you want to make a donation by phone, you can contact the Red Cross by dialing 1-800-418-1111. That's 1-800-418-1111, or by emailing wecare@redcross.ca. That's wecare@redcross.ca. So help out our fellow citizens in Manitoba if you have the opportunity. All right. Words of wisdom, kids and cubs. If the weather's a little better where you are and you're actually able to go outside, go out and get yourself a big breath of fresh air. Other words of wisdom: don't swarm people's cars and jump on them and break the windshields. Don't do that. Also, don't steal from your family. Don't steal from the indigenous, and don't have a stash of 439 or something like that weapons in your home. And if you do have weapons in your home, please be a law-abiding firearms owner. Don't be Inky Mark, allegedly. Just saying. All right. And also, don't sell state secrets to the Chinese or any other foreign nation, by the way. Apparently, these things need to be said, given the content of today's show. Just saying. All right. Those are my words of wisdom. Sometimes you got to state the obvious, kids and cubs. Sometimes you just got to. All right. So, everybody, I guess it's time for some audience participation. At the count of 3, can I please have you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Let me hear you. Yeah, that's the good stuff. All right, kids and cubs, it can be a tough world out there, so please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And since you asked so nicely, here's a little cock-a-doodle-doo just for you. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, Hot pepper sauce is made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, a little bit of news of some Canadians who make us proud. We had the Pan Pacific swim trials, and even though Summer McIntosh had to bow out early after swimming 2 events, Taylor Ruck and Ella Jansen continued to set the pace at the penultimate night of the 2026 Bell Canadian Swimming Trials in Montreal, with both swimmers adding another gold medal to their standout trial campaigns. Ruck captured the women's 50-meter freestyle title to collect her 4th victory over the week, while Jansen claimed the women's 200-meter individual medley crown for a 3rd gold and 4th medal overall. Ruck, a 4-time Olympic medalist, was in control from the start, and she has been one of the meet's most dominant performers through the first 4 nights of racing. In fact, she was the first Canadian person other than Summer McIntosh in a good long while to have picked up 4 national titles at the same meet. So there you go. Congratulations to them. Ellen Jansen continued her dominant run, capturing her 3rd gold medal after adding the women's 200-meter individual medley title to victories in the 200-meter and 400-meter freestyle. And it seems that in Canada, one summer is not enough. We also have a swimmer named Summer Cardwell who claimed silver. And the 200 individual medley. Hey, summer happens so fast. Of course, there were good performances by a whole bunch of other swimmers over the trial. Leilani Fak, Sarah Fournier, Kylie Mass, Kayla Sanchez, Yuri Kissel, Mary Sophie Harvey, Brooklyn Douthright, Finley Knox, Lauren Wigginton, Tristan Yankovic. A whole bunch of people did very well. Alexandre Lepage had one of the biggest performance of that fourth night, capturing her 1st gold medal. So that was cool for her, and meeting the qualifying standard for the Pan Pacific Championships as well, which means that she'll get to go. Sophie Angus, Shima Tagavi, Oliver Dawson, Nathan Thomas, just everyone. And that's Olympic and Paralympic competition swimmers at the trials here from Canada. So a lot to celebrate there, kids and cubs. We've done very well. Also, in the Canadians who make us proud, maybe a little bit of a different take on it, but we have authors that we're going to talk about today. It seems that the 2026 Sunburst Award, which is a literary award for fantasy, is going to be distributed. The winner will receive $3,000. It is presented by the Sunburst Award Society, recognizing the best Canadian fantasy books. And for this year, authors Hiran Ennis, Mireille Gagné, Amanda Leduc, Helen Marshall, and Mackenzie Nolan are on the shortlist. Ennis is shortlisted for the novel The Works of Vermin, set in the fantastical city of Tilliard, a place carved into the stump of an ancient tree. Okay. And the novel Guy Boulin is determined to keep his sister out of debt, so he takes on the dangerous job as an exterminator, hunting the terrifying creatures that crawl up from the river. He's tasked with his most horrifying mark yet, a giant centipede with a taste for art and venom that can kill. But in order to keep his sister afloat, he has no choice but to pursue it. Quebec City author Mireille Gagné, is on the list for her novel Horsefly, translated from French by Pablo Strauss. Horsefly is a chilling tale that exposes the consequences of humanity's attempts to manipulate nature, told in 2 timelines. In 1942, Thomas, a young entomologist, is sent to a remote island to work on a secret wartime project involving horseflies as a biological weapon. In 2025, a man turns to his grandfather for help in understanding those experiments after a swarm of horseflies is unleashed and sets off a violent frenzy. Based in Hamilton, Ontario, Leduc is on the short list. That's Amanda Leduc for her novel Wildlife, which blends the boundary between animals and humans. It tells the story of Josiah, who was sent from Scotland to Siberia in the 19th century on a Christian mission. He's rescued from a natural disaster by 2 hyenas. As the story progresses, animals break free from captivity and force humans to accept that they are not that different from other species around them. Helen Marshall, born in Ontario, but now based in Australia, is nominated for her novel, The Lady, the Tiger, and the Girl Who Loved Death. It's a fantasy book about a young woman who grows up in a war-torn country. Reeling from the attack that kills her parents, she travels to the city and learns from her grandmother how to tame death. She joins the dark, glamorous world of the circus and sets forward on a quest for justice. And finally, Newfoundland author Mackenzie Nolan, that is on the shortlist for her debut novel Veal, set in a small town known only for its university and the infamous murders of many young women. Veal follows 4 women as they find themselves on the hunt for a monster that not all of them are convinced exist. Quote, the title stood out for its strong characters and its effective exploration of violence against women, how it's perceived, received, and often dismissed and ignored, said the jury. Nolan threads the story with just the right level of doubt to keep readers wondering whether the monster at the heart of the novel was real, while layering themes of friendship, desire, obsession, and darkness. The winner of the 2026 Sunburst Award will be announced this fall. It was first started in 2001. The award was on a hiatus from 2020 to 2024, but returned last year. Last year's winner was Nalo Hopkinson for Blackheart Man. Hopkinson previously won in 2008 for The New Moon's Arms and in 2003 for Skinfolk. Other past winners include Silvia Moreno Garcia, Guy Cavriel Kay, Cory Doctorow, and Ruth Ozeki. So there you go. Some Canadians who make us proud from the pool and the pen. Yeah. Always working up here. All right, kids and cubs. So that's all I got for you. Amour et bisous, and we will see you again tomorrow.